Hi everyone, it's Becky here. So welcome to another new video on my YouTube channel. Today I am taking you all to Vancouver Island again. First of all, I'm going to take the first sailing of the ferry of the day at 5 a.m. We're going to Nanaimo again this time. So after parking our car, I'm going to go upstairs to find a spot. I sketched the sunrise outside the ferry window and also the other passengers in front of me. Here's my very basic sketching tool and the people and the view in front of me. It's a really bright and refreshing morning. Dudu is having his breakfast in the car as we are leaving the ferry. It's another fresh, lovely morning. Good morning, Nanaimo. And my first sketching spot is the French Creek Harbor, about 40 minutes drive from the ferry terminal. So here I'm going to spend 1 minute using my number 2 pencil to do a very quick layout of the general proportions of the different elements in this quayside landscape, especially the sizes and placement of these boats, which are a little bit tricky. I'm getting a little tired, from traveling, so it's just a little easier for me to do a very quick pencil layout as a visualization first. Alright, so now I'm ready to draw with my Sailor brand Fude fountain pen with Noodler's brown number 41 ink. So first of all, I am enjoying drawing the rocks of the boulder wrapping around the quayside. So when we're sketching details like this, of course you don't have to copy. If you stare very intently, you're going to get very tired and dizzy. So I'm just kind of summarizing the pile of rocks over here. Now I want to take a break because there's an overlapping of the boats in front of the rocky boulder. So now I just drew the first 2 boats overlapping each other and adding the railings, the windows of these little boats. The shapes are actually very abstract, so you really have to slow down and trust the various geometric shapes that you see. And now I am eyeballing the placement of the 3rd boat over here. Looking at these boats from perspective, they're getting lower and lower here on the page from left to right. The boats on the right side of this little quayside landscape, they are closer to me. As you can see, these are getting bigger and bigger as well. In terms of sizes, I'm talking about here, we're actually seeing illusion. These boats closer to me, they're seemingly getting bigger and bigger. But the reality is that these boats are about the same size. It's just because the ones that are closer to me, they are seemingly bigger. And that's how I found this little landscape to be really interesting to be sketched, is the perspective of these boats. And just finishing up these 5 boats. The bottom of these boats are getting lower and lower as they move towards the right. And then keep adding more railings and window frames for these boats above the trapezoid shapes. And just drawing the front of the 6th boat over here. I love how these boats are really neatly laid out. Yeah, so I found the layout in this case to be much more interesting compared to the other quaysides that I've been to in Vancouver. Okay, and so yeah, this is this lovely row of boats that I've got in the front. So actually in the middle and also in the back, close to the boulder, I see more boats and wooden poles to anchor and secure the boats behind these 6 boats. Just adding some little stripes for the front part of these little boats. Accentuate the top edge and also the window and the railing frames so they stand out even stronger. This is the central focus of my sketch. And after that, I'm adding these details in between these wooden poles here in the middle. And using quick vertical hatching lines to give these wooden poles a grainy and aged texture. I can also see other small and metallic thingies in between. When we're sketching urban details like these, you don't have to know what those things are. Just draw those shapes that you see. And now I am drawing the mast of this boat here in the middle. These metallic poles sticking out vertically from the body part. Yeah, this one is very much a thin line, using the back of my fountain pen nib and gentle hand pressure to get these thin vertical lines done. Again, these lines of the mast are at different heights because these boats are laying on different horizontal levels in the water. And these short diagonal wires connecting the different parts of the boat together. So I'm not an expert in boat structures. So what I'm seeing are, a bunch of metallic wires and posts in vertical and diagonal directions. And just trying to see and capture as many of these lines and segments as I can. Of course, I can't capture every single detail that's out there. Here I'm drawing this little canopy of a boat in the middle. A little bit accentuation on the bottom of that canopy. And more diagonal lines. So I see a lot of 45-degree angled lines. And coming back to these boats, I'm adding heavier line weight for the bottom part of these boats by just tracing over that bottom curve of each boat again so they stand out from the water even better. And really taking my time to draw more little canopies and metallic structures. I think this is the window of another boat behind. And shading in those two window panels so they stand out even better. Rather than using lines, I do also use blocks of solid shapes just to make those objects look even more prominent. And keep adding more loose lines behind the main boats. These boat windows here in the far distance, they are looking smaller. So just making those windows into smaller blocks of solid brown shapes for a sense of distance using illusions. And then these seemingly shorter vertical lines of the boat mast. Again, these vertical lines are looking shorter because the boats are in the far distance. And just speeding up the drawing process a little bit more here. So the speed right now is 4 times faster than my actual drawing speed. Just getting these abstract metallic structures done between the boats and the boulder. Okay, so the boats and the other stuff around them are done. Now I'm continuing to draw the rocks of the boulder. It's easier here because most of the little seawall here is being covered by the boats. After that, I'm drawing this platform using a loose horizontal line. And then I'm seeing these cars as very simple blocks of shapes with 1 or 2 wheels on the bottom of each round shape. And a lamp post over there. So this is how I simplify these cars into these cute, super simple shapes of a simple outline, 2 solid circles for the wheels, and tiny little squares and rectangles for the shaded windows. And keep drawing more. So these are actually mostly the backs of the cars on the right hand side. And yeah, that's done. That's a parking lot area. So behind the parking lot, I see these old houses. As always, I'm only seeing the essence of these houses, that the tops of these rooftops are very much a simple triangle. And a couple windows for the top floors, just to define that house. And that's it. Keep it really simple. Leave the rest of the details for the viewers to imagine by not drawing way too much. Accentuate underneath the eaves of each house. And that's the little village right there. Now I'm using very loose and squiggly lines, shaking my wrist a little bit to draw the foliage outline and some seagulls swooping by to give a really nice sense of a marina. And in the last couple minutes of the line work process, I'm adding a bit of texture for the bottom part of the little forest behind the village, using squiggly lines overlapping and another lamp post sticking out, and accentuate the bottoms of these boats even more. And using very gentle hand pressure to trace out the reflections of these boats, and so making the water surface even more realistic. And at the same time, gentle loose pressure, hand pressure of horizontal line segments to depict the feel of gentle ripples as the breeze is blowing over the surface of water. And just adding some final bits of details in the middle part of the sketch, accentuate those rocks a little bit more and those little objects. That's it for the line drawing. It took me about 20 minutes to draw. Now I'm ready to paint watercolors. I'm using mostly Mongyo watercolors with a couple of Etchr colors mixed in, and also Hooker's Green from Daniel Smith. I'm starting with the sky area, as always, by wetting the sky area with clear water, so the blue is going to spread out quickly and smoothly. Starting with this mix of cerulean blue and a tiny bit of cobalt blue. Using very rapid movement and 90-degree angle holding that brush for that thin blue line is the gap in between a couple pieces of cloud floating around the horizon. I'm also adding a bit of a diluted yellow ochre for the tint of sunshine on those white clouds closer to the horizon. Wetting the water area with clear water, and get ready for the wet onto wet technique. Same for the forest as well. I think I'm going to add the lovely juicy yellow green. This is mostly yellow ochre and a tiny bit of lime green. Now blending on a little bit of Hooker's Green for the top part of the forest. And when we're painting watercolors over a finished line work, it doesn't have to be always perfectly inside those outlines, especially painting foliage forms. Now I'm going to let the forest area to dry off a little bit before adding more contrast, putting on a bit of diluted yellow ochre and a tiny bit of burnt sienna for the boulder and the little parking lot platform right there. So the colors of water is always so mysterious and subtle. It's always different. Even when you're sketching the same body of water, different seasons, different times of the day, it's going to show up with different colors and reflections, or even the ripple patterns. Okay, I'm just putting on a bit of leftover yellow-green for the edge of the water closer to the boulder, and a bit of cobalt blue, a little lower from that yellow-green patch, leaving a very soft white in between the blue and the green. When I'm painting the first layer for water, I like to pay attention to those white streaks or almost white streaks, blending on cobalt blue and a little bit of royal purple. Now I'm seeing some magical purplish reflection for this foreground area of the water. And for the first layer of painting water, I like to keep my wash very, very transparent, containing a very high ratio of water to keep it transparent. If you're using good quality watercolors, the saturation of colors should be still pretty high, despite adding a lot of water into the paint. Now it's time to put in some little bit more refined details, like these little ripples there around the edge of the boat. So this color I'm using right now is cerulean blue mixed with a bit of Hooker's Green for a bit of blue turquoise value. Yeah, and this one as well, playing with the different ratio of Hooker's Green and cobalt blue, more or less water. The turquoise is more concentrated closer to the bottom edge of these boats, as you can see, And I'm also working using the wet onto wet technique for very soft blendings. And now I am shading these boats by using the leftover bluish gray that I mixed with cobalt blue and a little bit of royal purple, diluted with quite a lot of water for the first layer. Now I'm adding on the second layer for a bit of value transition and containing a bit more royal purple. I think that boat is actually a purple boat. And cobalt blue there to shade the part closer with the overlapping area. And keep adding more stronger tones and contrast for the edges, for the sharp edges of these boats, so they're standing out even better. Yeah, so when painting watercolors, don't be afraid about adding stronger brush marks and values for certain areas. Now I'm trying to spice up the saturation of the sketch by adding even more juicy colors, warm colors of red brown for the little piece of canopy with the boat there, and a green turquoise canopy for another little boat there. Okay, and keep adding more of this green turquoise, clean my brush, and start to add some brown or burnt sienna for the little rooftops of the Marina houses there in the distance. Very quick punches and leaving some parts of those house exteriors as white. And a couple of these houses are actually pretty colorful. One is green turquoise and this one is red brown. So yeah, just punching these juicy colors on there to add character for these houses. And a bit more brown for the rooftops and leftover residue of bluish gray to shade some of these white houses. And another quick dash of grayish color for that white house there. So while I was painting those houses, the water area is very much all dried. So now I'm ready to add some very clear brush strokes for the rhythm of lapping water, especially for the foreground over here. Yeah, just playing with very relaxing hand pressure, holding the brush, playing with a ratio of cobalt blue and royal purple. And then wet onto wet, a more concentrated bluish purple. And at the same time, not overpainting, leaving some tiny gaps in between these brush strokes untouched for the shine of water. Adding some little bit more shading, mostly grays in between these boats and other structures of the marina. And moving on to this final polishing stage is all about adding little bits of grays here and there. For those areas having a slightly lighter value, they are gonna pop out even better than those darker grayed areas. So this is how I create a sense of illusion and the gentle atmosphere in my urban sketches, is to use actually quite a lot of grays for a sense of depth. Okay, now adding even more contrast, because when watercolor dries, the tone or value tend to fade away a little bit. So I'm always going back to those areas for optimal amount of contrast. Okay, so I just mixed a bit of greenish gray and diluted quite a lot of water. And I mixed this greenish gray by mixing leftover green and a bit of burnt sienna. These rocks are covered with algae from the sea. Okay, and now adding some little polish of gray for the platform of the parking lot, especially underneath the cars. Now it's time to add even more dramatic effect for the little forest behind the village. So I'm adding shade of green, or actually various shades of green, by mixing Viridian green or Hooker's green with burnt sienna. I'm always playing with a ratio of these 2 or 3 colors blending together. The top part of the forest or the contour outline of the trees are actually very clear. And I want to keep the bottom of the forest very light colored of the fresh yellow-green, mostly untouched, to give a nice misty effect. A bit of really nice enchanted feel for this urban sketch. So as artists, we always have the permission to add a more enchanted feel to a seemingly ordinary landscape. So sitting here in real life with the sun baking on my back is a really enjoyable experience. I think that's it for this little urban sketch. It took me just 45 minutes to draw and paint. Thank you so much for watching this video, everyone. If you like it, please click like and leave me a comment below. Subscribe to my channel for more sketchy adventures. And I will see you again very soon next time. Have a great day, everyone. Bye!